Hello, class. Sorry I can't be there with you today, but I want to give you a quick intro to today's class, exactly what we're going to be going over. So today is your third book club meeting, and as soon as this video is done, I'm going to ask that you fall into your various corners, and I'll let you decide amongst yourselves where your corners are going to be, but I want you all to relocate to each other so you can discuss where you're at in your book using the questions I have below on theme. But then I also want you to get into the worksheet that I'm going to ask you to work on as a group to get today. That is also linked below. Now you'll see that as usual, I'm asking one of you in the group to make a copy of that sheet and then to share it with each other so you can all work on the same sheet. Do make sure that each of you turns that in. But to help you with that, since the topic is theme, I wanted to show you one really cool strategy that can really help you to take, for instance, a certain excerpt or quote from your text and really break it down into its connection to a theme or topic. So first off, today's focus is all about theme. You guys know what theme is at this stage. I don't know that I really need to go over that, but a theme briefly is a topic of interest in the story. This could be a topic that the author themselves is really interested in writing about, or at least a topic that the story seems to really be focused on talking about. Now, in your groups, I'm going to ask you to discuss and come up with a few of them, but on the worksheet, you're going to analyze just two. Now, in order to look at and examine how maybe different parts of the book maybe talk about a particular topic, there's a couple different patterns you can look for, okay? And these patterns are what we would call strands and binaries. Now, those words are really technical sounding, but they need not be that technical. Really, what we're talking about when we talk about a strand is a simple pattern of words that are similar to each other. And I don't mean like it's the same word. I mean, it's words that revolve around the same topic or idea. A good example of this would be if I were looking at a poem and it said words like frigid, icy, snowy. I might say that I'm looking at a strand here that seems really to do with a lot with either cold or winter. These are a bunch of different words and details that certainly add up to that same concept. I might be looking at that kind of theme, right? And so the next step for me would maybe be to look at how the author uses those words, right? So a strand is simple. It's a pattern of language that we see repeating an idea over and over again, which is really helpful if we're looking for a topic or theme. We're looking for an idea that is repeated. And this is a quote from the very end of Great Gatsby. You guys may remember this. We read through it. But I'm not going to read through it all, but I just want to show you really briefly that even within this short passage, there is a lot of repeated ideas that are deeply connected to themes of the book. And I'll show you an example. Look at all these colors here, right? This is crazy. It looks like Walt Disney threw up or something. But the blue that you can see up there, for instance, has to do with the theme of the past, right? We've got words like old, behind, back, and you see back is repeated even down below. But then we've got also words like this green word here at the top, wonder, and then believed and dream. These are words that have a lot to do with the concept of hope. When I look at all those words, I see that there's a theme of hope in this passage. Likewise, we know that that's a theme in The Great Gatsby as well. And so maybe that's a theme I could talk about in this particular section. But I have other options too, because the strands don't stop there, guys. There's also strands like obscurity, dark and night, which you see in this light purple color, right? And then there's also in the orange, future tomorrow morning. We're talking about the future versus the past, right? And by the way, verses, that brings me to that second pattern that you could look for. Binaries. Binaries have to do with verses or oppositions. Binary refers to two, right? So what we're talking about when we're talking about binaries are like opposites of each other, oppositions. And when we see oppositions, it usually is meant to point out something about maybe a particular theme. And if we look back at that passage, we'll see that there's a few of them, right? We've got the old unknown world and what's already behind him. We're thinking about that. We're talking about the past, right? But then we've also got the orgastic future, tomorrow, one fine morning. Do you see that there's a binary there? It's an opposition of what? Future and past. So that might be a potential either two themes, or they might relate together to a theme. For instance, when I think about past versus future, what I'm really talking about is like time, which is definitely a theme in The Great Gatsby. So looking at that opposition, looking at that binary, those opposites, I can start to develop an idea that maybe this passage has a lot to do with time. Likewise, there's another opposition here. We've got light and dark, morning and night, right? Again, kind of relates to time if you think about it, because this is just another way of talking about time as night and day. But we also, when we think about light and dark, we might also be thinking about unknowing versus knowing. The future is unknown, the past is obviously known, right? So that also might hold some significance when I'm thinking about this passage as well. There's also city and fields. I notice there's this contrast, this opposite between the city and the country. The city sort of representing the light and the bright future and the hope of tomorrow and modernity, but then the fields, right? The fields representing sort of the old country, untamed nature, the countryside, the old way, the past, right? Think about Gatsby. He comes from those places, right? So all of this, by the way, from just this one passage, but it's worth noting, of course, that you may not find this many in your passage, but you want to try to find a passage that you think really, where the author or the book really seems to be talking about a particular topic. And one way to do that is to maybe do some of this work with strands or binaries. So when you find a quote that you want to include in your worksheet, a great next step for you might be to ask, okay, what's a good quote, or within that quote, where do I see maybe some opposites or some repeated words that connect to that topic really well? That might give you some really good material to write about and explain. Let's see here. So in order to do your activity, what I'm going to ask you to do in just a second here is, if you go to item 4 on today's agenda, I'm just pulling it up here on the screen, you can see. I'm going to pull it up so you guys can see it. Obviously, one of you in your group is going to make a copy of it like this. Once you've made the copy, share it with your other book club members. And here is the worksheet. It has a quick explanation of strands and binaries, which I just went over, so I'm not going to go into that. But I also want to differentiate between theme and message. Theme is a topic that's important to the story, okay? So maybe it's war, maybe it's love, maybe it's hope, maybe it's the future, the past, death, life, et cetera, right? So the theme is more of a topic. That's what I want you to think of it as. The message, however, what is the perspective or viewpoint or message that the book seems to be making about the topic? Now, there's a lot of ways we could do that, but one important way to do that is to look at the words the author uses to describe the topic. Are they overly negative? Are they overly positive? Are they flippant? Are they sarcastic? Are they critical? What kinds of words do they use to describe that? And that's where our strands and binaries can come in, because those can really help us to identify the kinds of words the author's using on that topic. And thus, we can also help to understand, it'll also help us to understand the message they're actually trying to say about that topic. So, 2 themes I want you to identify. When you have a theme, I want you to write that topic, worth noting, just the topic, not the message, right there at the top. Then I want you to go into some evidence. Find a topic with your peers that, or find a passage from the book that really deals with that topic, that talks about that topic, right? Where that topic seems to really be under discussion. Use page numbers for that. The next thing I want you to do is try to explain in what ways you think that above passage is about the topic, right? In what ways does it portray the topic? What kind of language does it use to describe it? And that's where you can also get into describing some of the strands or binaries. What are some of the words or opposites you see in the passage that really connect to that theme, that connect to that topic? And then finally, I want you to try and paraphrase in your own words what you think the message is here. What do you think if the book were speaking directly to us about that topic? Let's say the topic is war. What is the book trying to say about war then? What would the message be? And again, using some of those details before, you might be able to get a sense of what is the kind of tone the author has about that topic? What kind of attitude do they seem to be expressing about it? That can give us some clues about what kind of message you may want to paraphrase. So that is what you're working on today. It's 10 easy points. In terms of your annotation challenge, you may remember there was an annotation challenge where I'm going to give you 10 points for annotating. Good news, if you did not do it today, you kind of get a free pass because I'm going to be checking for those next time. So if you didn't do it today, you have an opportunity here to do that annotation, have those sticky notes in there. I'm going to be checking for those next time we meet in person, and those are 10 easy points that you can get. Speaking of which, this worksheet itself, 10 easy points as well. No excuse why you guys can't have that done. When you finish this with your group mates, when you finish the worksheet and you finish discussing, simply put, the rest of the time is for you to read. So make sure that you're reading, you're taking advantage of this time. We will be finishing our books late this week into early next week. And so we really want to focus on, if we're behind, catching up, and if we're on schedule, making sure that we finish out the book strong. That said, I'm sorry I can't be there with you all. I miss you, and I will see you next time. Bye now.